Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, starting off February with a bang here. And I do want to just thank some of my January guests because we had a dope January here on the show, closing out with Brad Racino there from New York Cannabis Insider, one of my favorite journalists in the country here, really covering the industry in a proper way, in my opinion. We had Dr. Carl Craig from Craig Corporate Advantage, who's another PhD scientist who was on the show with me. We had Nate Remis, some nice artist spotlights, some of the MCs here doing their thing. Well, he's in New York now, but Vermont crew out there representing. Stephen Houghton from the CNY Hemp Processes in New York. Nancy Wallace down in Oklahoma. A bunch of great guests. And I do just want to, before I bring my guest on this afternoon, I got a couple of dope shows coming up that I'd like to talk about. On Thursday, I've got Shauna DeMattos here from the Baked Gallery in Vermont, who's doing some super interesting research into cannabinoids and, different type of health issues that I found fascinating. On Sunday, I've got my homegirl Heather Schlosser coming on the show. I think she's out in Arizona or Cali. I can't remember exactly where Heather's at, but she's coming on. And then Tuesday, I got Elliot Lewis from Catalyst out in California. And I got to get Elliot on the phone because this guy is he's fired up out in California. And that's going to be another great show here. So my guest today, however, and this is super cool. We got to talk when I was at the State House the other day. I got to talk to her when I was waiting for this press conference to go down, the PFAS press conference. Had a fascinating phone call. And without wasting too much more time, she's the founder of the National Diversity and Inclusion Cannabis Alliance. And today, my guest, wham bam, it's Bonita Money. Bo, thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. Look forward to it.
Cool. Before we get started into anything serious, would you do a 5-minute life story for us?
Sure, no problem. So I am originally from Korea. My father is Black. My mother is Korean. And my Korean name is Pak Changja. And my American name is Bonita Money. So Money is my real last name. My father's name is actually Benjamin Franklin Money Jr. So, I always, in school, I always got teased about that. They were like, oh, Money can't be your real name. And, so yeah, it is. But anyway, so I was raised in Monterey, California, moved to LA when I was like 18, went to college here. So went into the cannabis industry about 2015 and really was just, checking out the scenery of what was happening in Colorado. And, in California, we had been medicinally legal for like 20 some odd years. We just hadn't, gone recreational before, Colorado and Washington, which was kind of surprising. But, I saw what Colorado was doing. And, what I really found is that me taking a deep dive into the industry, going to different conferences, networking, I just found that there were not people that looked like me in the industry. It just was like a lot of white men in suits that just were basically appropriating the work that Black and brown folks went to prison for, in the illegal market. So, I created Indica based on, wanting to create a platform for Black and brown folks to be in the industry and have real ownership and equity in the industry. So with Indica, we're a nonprofit. And we work around social justice and social equity in the cannabis industry. So, we help with, cannabis social equity policy, shaping, what the cities, municipalities, states are doing. And I'm now international. I'm working on policy in Korea, and we're about to go recreational there. We're taking it to vote this year. So, it's real important for me to have people of color to really have ownership and equity in this industry because, again, the war on drugs basically decimated our communities. It really targeted those communities, and those communities are still suffering. So that work was very important. And so we started in Los Angeles, but we are national. So we're also in Illinois, so we're in Chicago, and then also New York and New Jersey. So for me, I just want to be sure that we could invest in our communities, and they definitely need it. So, we do work workforce development. We do civil legal services. So we do free expungement clinics twice a month. We have a really robust youth program, and we have a nonviolent, well, an anti-violence program as well. So, for us, we just want to like deal with the issues that are in these communities, and poverty is such a big issue for these communities, and cannabis can help to revitalize and reinvest in these communities because that's what's really needed. So, I'm happy to be here and, educate your audience on what they may not know about social equity and the war on drugs and
Yeah.
our
And I'm gonna put you in the big box here. There we go. Sorry. I'm trying to find a way to make it start with you in the big box, but it never does that. So would you tell us more about the expungement clinics, please? Because I've had a couple of criminal charges expunged myself, and it was pretty huge for me. But I'd love to hear about that a little more from you, please.
So we started doing expungements, well, free expungement clinics back in 2018. And we partnered with the Los Angeles Public Defender's Office. So they would do all our legal work for us. And, they would come to the clinics, and we would process anywhere from 70 to 100 people per day. And it was just really important that folks had those barriers, lifted from them because those were barriers to employment, to housing, to student loans. There's, over 4,000 barriers to having a criminal conviction. And a lot of them were just cannabis convictions. So, and we expunge more than that, though. We can expunge like petty thefts, robberies. I mean, all types of things, depending on how old they are. But for us, we want to make sure that, again, we are lowering those barriers. So, we do them in Chicago and Los Angeles. And then we also did a Summer of Justice tour in 2000, I think it was 2011. And we hit 8 states in a matter of 2 months.
Do you remember which 8 states they were?
Yeah. California, Illinois, Arizona, Massachusetts, Ohio, Michigan, Florida, and New York.
Oh, so you're going everywhere, trying to spread it out a little bit, like sort of all over the country, maybe.
Absolutely, because people need help, and there's not a lot of those free resources out there. And you'll have some groups that may come in and do one clinic, and that's it. But that's just not enough to deal with the population that's in need.
I think that's spot on, and I also thought maybe some of these social equity measures around the country didn't go far enough to deal with the full scope of this problem, and the number of people that sort of had their lives fucked up by these laws.
You're absolutely right.
Okay. I also
Absolutely
want, yeah, okay. I also want to, it's Bonita Money, Indica. I was really curious. I think you said that you were the only cannabis organization to be funded by the governor's office or something to that effect.
Yeah, we were first funded by the governor's office in California under their GoBiz program in 2019. And, when we started this organization, because I had a really good board that, it was all of us that were activists that just really wanted to see, true equity and social equity in this industry. So, we were self-funded for a few years, and then we were able to get funding based on under Prop 64. They had in that bill, which Lynn Lyman, she co-authored, and she put that actually in that bill. So $50 million a year goes into community reinvestment from cannabis tax dollars. So it funds, organizations and certain groups that do the work in the community. Those marginalized communities that were affected by the war on drugs. Bring in workforce development, civil legal services. What else? Youth programming, violence reduction programs. Workforce development, all that. So that's really important. And so Illinois picked up the same model in 2020, and then we were funded there. So we work out of Chicago and like the South suburbs. So we're able to do the same type of work. And then again, we got
Oh,
funded.
breaking up there a little. Sorry, we broke up there
Is it
for a
me?
second. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
No, I think that actually might be me, but we're back now. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. Carry on.
Okay. So what didn't you hear though? Well, I guess where did it start to?
So you were talking about the something about a word for. Oh boy, I'm having a stoner moment.
It's okay.
Geez.
So I was talking about just the programming that we're able to do based on the
Right,
funding that
correct.
we get from the governor's office. Yeah.
Right, and then
So
it broke down somewhere after that. Yeah.
okay. So yeah, so we're able to do the, violence reduction programs, the youth programming, the youth STEM programming, of course, workforce development, all that. And I want to see more states, be able to have that same type of model where they are using cannabis tax dollars. Connecticut is going to, I think, allot 100% after I think 3 to 5 years to community reinvestment from their cannabis tax dollars. So that's really exciting to hear. Um, New
Oh boy.
York, not.
I
I
hope
mean,
Lou's I hope Lou's not listening to this in Connecticut right now because he probably have some things to say about that. Um,
really.
Connecticut seems like a disaster, but yeah, carry on, Bonita. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I would say that I think with cannabis policy and social equity policy, we've never had a perfect program. I don't think we've even had any really good programs, across the nation. And I've worked on probably most of them, but unfortunately, when you have lawmakers writing policy around social equity or even cannabis, it tends to fail a little bit. So, because they really, and this is what I suggested like 8 years ago, is that I think that all lawmakers need to work with an advisory group of real operators, whether it be from the legacy market and from the legal market. That needs to happen because you can't write good policy if you're not talking to the real folks in the industry.
And to your point that you just made right there, the consulting firms that I've seen hired here in Vermont really didn't seem to have any cannabis experience. And a lot of the people that show up to the public meetings and constantly voice their opinion over and over and over seem to be getting ignored. And those are the people that know what they're doing. And,
Yeah.
and it's frustrating to watch that play out in that manner.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Because, this could really flow so well, if we had really good policy. And that's been the problem with social equity, is because, they're just not listening to what the community needs and what these operators need. And there was no resources put around these programs, and you can't roll out a program without resources, especially when you have qualifications of social equity folks that are supposed to be low income and, have, criminal records. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And it just wasn't well thought out. And, I have a lot of respect for the states and the municipalities that did, roll out social equity programs. But again, we have to do better.
I felt like a lot of that was just smoke and mirrors, or maybe a little bit of window dressing on some programs that already had a lot of bad ideas behind them.
I agree. I agree. I just think that a lot of people are taking advantage of these programs. They're manipulating the programs. It's just, it's tough. If you've been around this industry, for the last 6-7 years, you see what's happened. As states legalize, things just get, it just gets all muddy. It's just, I don't know. That's why, I've been working Hawaii for the last couple of years, and, the operators that are working under the medical, especially the cultivators that are working under the medical policy, they don't want to go recreational. They don't see where it's going to be an advantage for them, and actually, they feel it's going to hurt them. And you don't want operators that have been in this industry for a lot of years in the legacy market and then going legal now to have to feel that they cannot go recreational because it's going to harm them. And this is their livelihood. This is, especially the people in Hawaii, they've been doing this 20 years, in the legacy market, and it's all they know. And so, I think lawmakers need to work with these folks and hear them. Really hear them. Yeah, that's the only way we're going to have a really successful industry.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, in my opinion, to see some of those people's, advice just straight up being ignored. When that's the advice that you need to make this a successful industry, because those are the people that have been doing it the whole time.
Yeah,
they built this entire shit, and without them, there would be no legal market, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So, and unfortunately, if you look what's going on with the MSOs and, how we have terrible weed in a lot of these states, because they don't really care. And when you have these master growers that have been around 20 years in the legacy market, they know how to grow weed and they grow good weed, and clean weed. And I'm not finding that in a lot of states that just have come on board and they're just doing mass production and they don't really give a shit about, the health, safety, wellness of folks that are buying their weed. And, I know this for a fact from people that have worked for these companies, and they know exactly what, how harmful their weed is. They sell, moldy weed. They're selling weed that has pesticides. It's bad.
I've also seen some pictures and heard a lot of stories that just kind of make me, it's bad. It is bad. It's people that don't care about the plant that are just trying to make money off it. And boy, ding. We got a comment internet, Don. Wait, are we back? Oh, that might be my internet, but we got a comment. Romas, Hawaii avoided falling into the MPP trap like Connecticut did, at least for now. I think also I want to say you should do more looking into that, Romas, because Hawaii seemed like quite a mess too when I looked at, and I have a couple friends out there, Bonita, if you ever want to talk to some Hawaii guys.
Yeah, I have a lot of Hawaii guys too.
Cool.
I've been out there the last couple of years working on policy with them. So yeah.
Yeah, and you said you were working on some stuff in Korea. I'd love to hear about that.
Oh yeah, that's been interesting. It's been very interesting. I've been out there for the last couple of years, and they went legal in 2018 medicinally, but unfortunately, their medicinal program is not robust. It's not anything that people want to be involved with, and so I just, for me, I think one of the biggest issues though is people are still going to prison for cannabis there, and I know the big news has been the actor that killed himself. He was in the movie Parasite, and he just killed himself over the allegations of him smoking weed in LA. See, Korea has a law that if you're a Korean national and you go to any other country and you do any drug, when you get back to Korea, they prosecute you.
Whoa. For doing drugs, abroad.
In another country, yeah.
Boy, that's wild.
Which is so ridiculous. Korea's
this guy killed himself.
Country. Yeah, he killed himself because they basically ruined his life over an allegation, and they put this investigation together and they leaked it to the media, which is against the law, but they did it anyway. And, it wasn't even, they had no real evidence around it. It was all hearsay and people trying to blackmail him, extort him. So, and he probably did smoke weed in LA, but so what? You know what I mean? It's just like, this is so ridiculous. But Korea is such a, they're such a conservative, judgmental country, and I'm from there, but, it's just, it's so ridiculous that people lose their lives over cannabis. And I call it, social murder, because they basically drove him to kill himself because they took all his endorsements, all his movies, everything away from him. And the way Koreans are, they really care about how the public views them, because everything's about honor, dignity, pride. So, it's just really sad. So that needs to be changed immediately. And that's one of the things that I want to work on, is to make sure that as we move forward going recreational in Korea, that we can just decriminalize, period, and get that stigma away. Oh, sorry about that. So I just, for me, that's one of the most important things, because as you know, that's what I've been working on for the last, 8 years, is this the whole like redemption piece of making sure that folks that went to prison for cannabis now can have equity and ownership in this industry.
And some of these equity deals I've seen in some states kind of makes it look like you don't have that much ownership in the company. I've heard stories in Massachusetts where the equity owner will own as little as 10% of the company.
Right.
And to me, that's not really ownership. That's like you're a shareholder, kind of.
Correct. And that's not a real program. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just bullshit. That's when they feel that they're obligated to put a program in place to look like they're being equitable and diverse and everything else. But it's all smoke and mirrors. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It really
And that's
is.
kind of how
the programs they were set up to fail.
I think we're going to be on a lot of the same pages here. And hang on, I'm going to do another. I'm supposed to do this every like 10 or 15 minutes. It's Bonita Money from Indica here. Yeah, I'd like to act. And I know the reason I reached out to you was because of this LPP stuff, but I found myself just diving into your resume, and someone actually commented on my Instagram earlier, and I was wondering if I could ask you about this comment. So I think she's out in California, but mentioned that you guys maybe also funded Oaksterdam.
Yeah, we what?
She mentioned that you guys were involved with Oaksterdam or something.
Never. Not us.
All right.
Not us.
All right. Well, then I hope she's listening. Thanks for that wrong comment.
Where would they get that from? We're so independent. We very rarely collaborate with any of these groups. Just
hold up. I'm going to read the comment.
Yeah, please.
This was just on my Instagram. I posted I was doing this interview with you today, and she commented, and it was a lot of claps and fire. Like, it was a good comment. She said, Oaksterdam was also funded by them. Great job.
No, what she's talking about was LA City. So she was talking about LA City, and Oaksterdam, because I don't think Oaksterdam was funded by the state under the GOBIS program. They were funded by the city of Los Angeles to work on education for social equity folks.
Cool. All right. Well, I hope she heard that. Yeah. So I was curious because that was like, she seemed happy.
Well, maybe she meant that, they were funded as well by the city, but I don't think she meant that we were collaborative partners.
No. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I just had a quick note there. Thank you for explaining that. And also you mentioned, I got a meeting with Lynn tomorrow, and I also saw what I like to do here. What I like to do here is just slap up the story real quick, because this is the reason that I reached out to you originally. And I did pull up the Politico story. I didn't realize this was from Politico. And here, what I'll do first is this was the story where I saw it, which was from Work Week, which was written by Caitlin DeMange, who I actually met in Vegas at MJ BizCon a year and a half ago or whenever. But you pointed out that it actually is a Politico story, and I do have
Politico broke it. Yes, Politico broke that story, and I think that other publications picked it up and ran with it. But it was Mona Zhang who actually, who broke that story.
Cool.
She spent a lot of time on that story too, because she was trying to get. Now, she was doing a lot of interviews, but a lot of people didn't want to go on record about Steve. But they had a lot to say, but didn't want to go on record.
So let me read the headline here. It's Celebrities, Cash, and Questions. A new force roils the cannabis prisoner release movement. And then the subtitle is The Last Prisoner Project brings fundraising heft to a long-starved cause, but its fellow advocates say it isn't necessarily a team player. So for everybody who doesn't know, could you please tell us about Steve D'Angelo?
Me?
Yeah. Or
what do you want me to say? Do
Well,
we
I remember.
tell you his background, or what do you want? What I mean, what,
Well,
or do you want
I saw
me to
Steve.
talk about this situation?
I first saw Steve on Weed Wars when it was on Nat Geo or something when I was growing. That's where I first learned about Steve. But he has, I believe he had like a dispensary, Harborside or something, a dispensary
Correct.
brand out there, and an investment group called ArcView. And I'm curious how he got involved in this story here, about the prisoners getting released.
Oh, so the nonprofit, correct. So I don't know if anybody knows Weldon Angelo, but he's the one that actually, he says that Steve basically poached his idea, because when Weldon was released, his thing was that he wanted to be able to help other people that were incarcerated for cannabis to be released as well. And so he said that, he basically pitched the idea, yeah, let's do it, let's work together. And then all of a sudden, Steve launched LPP without Weldon. So that's Weldon's, that's his take on the whole thing. So I just, my thing is that, that was a little disturbing because I see a lot of that in this industry, and I hate to see that, when people appropriate other people's work. It's not okay. Because, again, it's tough enough to run a nonprofit, and the work that we do is, it's not easy. And, we put our hearts and soul into this work. These are passion projects. So, I just, that really bothered me. But then I had my own experience with LPP, and so did a lot of other organizations down here in Southern California, and they're based in Northern California. So, when we had to deal with them here, it was just really odd that they were trying to make an entrance into LA, because I didn't understand what kind of work they were trying to do here, because the work that they supposedly were doing, they could do from Northern California, and that's all. They don't need to have other offices anywhere else, because I think that their work is national, and really it's really more legal work than anything. So I didn't see why they were trying to get a footprint here in Los Angeles. But then I did understand after more conversations with the executive directors, because they have two of them, and then there's they like to step on a lot of toes.
Why did you ask them that? Like, why are you coming to our town? Like, you said they could do all their work from where they were at, and you also mentioned, I believe in the story, there was some comments to the effect of, well, the resources in this space are very limited, and they're
Correct.
gobbling up a lot of those, and
Correct.
maybe not getting a lot of work done.
Well, correct. I mean, and Lynn's going to be your guest tomorrow, so she can expound more on that. But the thing about it is that they just have really bad etiquette. And, in the nonprofit world, especially in cannabis nonprofits, it's really important to have good etiquette, because, and especially around the social justice, social equity space, it's hard for us to raise funds. So what we found was that they were the big dogs getting all this money in this space, and then actually just depleting the resources for smaller organizations. And when Lynn was executive director of DPP, they were the big dogs. They were getting all the donations, all the funding. And one thing about Lynn is that she made sure that all the organizations, the smaller organizations that were doing all the, boots on the ground work, they were getting funded. She would make sure that, she would fund them. And, that's proper etiquette, with nonprofits. And basically they were trying to step on everybody and stand on the backs of folks that have, really been doing the work and helping folks. And then we just found that more and more with what they said they were doing, in, I guess, that space of assisting folks getting out of prison for cannabis. Who did they really get out of prison? Because I can tell you for sure they were appropriating folks' work.
That was going to be I wanted to raise my hand and ask a question.
Oh, okay.
And this is a question I've also raised to the Last Prisoner Project, who has not responded to any of my questions. I said, how much money have you guys raised, and how many
Yeah.
people have you actually gotten out of prison?
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've seen, they've raised millions of dollars and haven't really got anyone out of prison.
Yeah, millions, millions on top of millions. And, and they're always, doing this whole like PR move. Anytime anybody gets out, they basically they take credit for it. And, like Sherry Sicard, she's been doing this work and she helped Craig Cecil get out of prison and they took credit for him. And then what they do with these guys is when they get out of prison, they give them a job basically to be their whole like, marketing tools and, to make them seem like they're really doing the work. But let me tell you what they did to Craig. So basically, when it was MJ Biz a few years ago, and I guess in the contract they signed with these folks that they have worked for them, is that they're not supposed to talk to the media. They're supposed to make sure that they're putting LPP in a positive light, all that, and it's for $5,000 a month. Well, Craig did some media, and so they basically told him that he was in breach of contract and told him that they were not going to be paying him anymore. And understand, this man was the last person that Trump gave a pardon to, and he had life in prison, and so he really
And
was trying to get his life back in order. The reentry was very tough.
and I think you said he did on the
Go
phone.
ahead.
I think you said he did 20 years.
Yeah, he did a little over 20 years. Yeah, on a life sentence. Mm-hmm. And he got
Sorry
pardoned.
to cut you off.
And
yeah, sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to
no
get that
problem.
in there.
Yeah, Craig Cecil, spelled Cesal. He's out of Illinois, actually, Chicago area. So, so Craig had been following me for a while. So I had met him at one of my events in Chicago, and shortly after I met him, LPP had basically fired him, and they make them sign, non-disclosures and whatnot, put gag orders on them, and all kinds of things. They threaten them. It was horrible. And so, this man, he just had been released that year. That was his only source of income. And they just really fucked him. And they basically said that if he's basically said anything about what had happened, with his termination, that they would not give him his last paycheck. So they were just holding all this stuff over his head, and it was just ridiculous. So anyway, so NDICA hired him. He became one of my case managers and one of my prisoner advocates in Illinois. And, it was just, he was a joy to work with because, ultimately Craig is someone who has integrity and tells the truth. And that's what LPP didn't like. They like folks that they can just puppeteer, which I think is just, it's fraudulent, it's phony, and it's interesting because when that Politico article came out, I got a lot of supporters that were supporting LPP and that were actually donating to LPP. They came to NDICA and started supporting us, and they said, we didn't know this was happening, but this is not a group that we want to support. We thought this was real. And a lot of people think it's real. And that's unfortunate, but it's all a PR move. And that's sad because that money can really be going somewhere. And what Craig told me is that basically the monies, that all those millions of dollars is going towards the co-executive director, Sarah. It's like her and all her like law school friends that she hired to work for LPP. It's their 6-figure salaries. That's where that money's going. And that's, seriously, it's like, I would like to know not just how much money they got, but I would like to know where it's going. How much money?
I've seen that. I've seen the financial breakdowns on their website, and I'm not going to plug their website on my show because I don't want to give them any free traffic. But I've looked at the numbers, and I also have asked myself the same questions,
Mm-hmm.
And also, it sounds like, and I saw this post where it sounded like, hey, maybe they got one guy out of jail, and then you said, hey, maybe they were just taking credit for some other people who got that guy out of jail and using it for PR, and that was fucking wild to me, like.
Well, I
seems
can
like
tell
they're
you, they
bringing.
didn't get Craig out of jail, and they take credit for getting him out of jail, and numerous other people. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And that's why, honestly, Craig was done with them anyway, because he just saw how they were moving and how unintegral they were. And it's just, they're basically duping the public, they're duping the industry, the people that really want to help and make sure that people are getting out of prison. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's sad, especially us that, for us that really put this work in, we're not money driven. We're really trying to make sure that we're reinvesting in these communities that were harmed by the war on drugs. So, but that's like a whole nother thing, when it comes to like what they were trying to do and like how they were trying to come into LA. And they went to Lynn first. They went to her organization, which is LARP. And then they didn't come to me until, I don't know, maybe 9 to 10 months later. But I didn't even know that they had already spoken to Lynn and wasted 6 months of her time. And then they were coming to me trying to do the same thing. And then to find out that they were going to all these different organizations that were doing the same type of work. And so what they had proposed to me was doing some type of like workforce. Well, they wanted to support our workforce development program, our expungement, just whatever else we were doing in the community. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds simple enough, right? So how are you going to support? So they wanted me to use some type of workforce development program that they had put together with Harvest Group. And I'm like, why would I do that? We have our own. You know what I mean? So I'm
What's
like,
what's the Harvest Group? Will you tell us about that for a second?
Harvest Group, yeah, they're an MSO that started out in Arizona. And I know they just merged, I think, a year or two ago with another big MSO. So that was an interesting situation. But I don't even know what that was about. I don't know why LPP felt the need to create even a workforce development program and why Harvest was even involved, why they were involved. I've never known them to be about social equity ever. They've approached us before, like about 6 years ago. And they just were not a group that were aligned with, I would say our mission statement, our goals, our ethics. It just wasn't for us. So that was another reason that I didn't really want to even entertain dealing with anything that they had worked on. So, but they kept pushing it. And then they kept wasting our time. I mean, it was meeting after meeting. They wanted to, my board would do a meeting with their board, and it was just a complete waste of time. I mean, and I just had to bottom line it. I just had to say, look, Mary, what do you really want? And what do you really like? What do you want to do? And how are you supporting us? What does that look like? Because again, we're not going to use your workforce development program. That's not going to happen. We have our own. We don't need yours. And what do you want in LA? We don't need you in LA. We don't need your help. Now, if you want to contribute financially, great. Oh yeah, okay, we'd love to. Well, when this political article came out, we did a meeting with Steve, and he wanted to discuss all this. So Lynn and I did a meeting with him. But he was so ridiculous. He basically tried to say he didn't know what was going on at LPP. He didn't know what they were really doing. And then when I told him, I said, they said they want to contribute financially. They never did. They tried to impose whatever programming they had on us to get us to, like, I don't know, collaborate, or I don't know. I didn't understand because they were never clear. But anyway, they wasted months and months of our time and did nothing.
Didn't Steve start LPP? Was that his baby?
Of course he did.
And
that's what I'm saying. How do you not know what's going on in your own organization? Not only that, but there should be some type of like policies and procedures. And then when I told him that they wanted to contribute to all these different organizations, he said, we don't give money to other organizations. So I don't even know why they would say that. Well, first of all, maybe you should talk to your executive directors, because they're the ones that have been approaching all these different groups for over a year in LA. So if you're going to tell me you don't know what they're doing, then shame on you. Because like as a founder of my organization, I need to know what everybody's doing all around the country that is part of my organization. So to play dumb and say, oh, well, I don't know what they're really doing. And you know what I mean? It's totally just that. I think that was even the worst part, that he was not even being accountable.
And
you know, even if say by some odd chance he really didn't know, then still take accountability. Well, then maybe you should go find out and go fix it.
And also there's this big, I believe ArcView was the group behind the Steep Hill Labs, which are being sued in Arkansas for like massive potency inflation in a big lawsuit.
Of course.
So,
yeah.
So, and it's come a long ways since Weed Wars. Steve, I'd love to give Steve on the show. Steve, come on. I'm here with Bald Money from Indica. I got a couple more for you here, Bo. Can I ask you about Tiffany
Bowden?
Yeah.
She's awesome. What about her?
Well, I was just curious. We were talking about the MCBA, and I was super curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just think that it's definitely not her vision of when she founded that, and it's just not. And unfortunately, people get caught up in a lot of ego, greed, everything else. So it's her co-founder that just pushed her out of her own organization. I mean, I think you should probably speak with her so she can tell her own story, but unfortunately this is the industry that we're in, and it's so new, and everybody's trying
come on, if you're listening.
And I just think that people need to get some integrity. It's not that difficult, but everybody's trying to be positioned, and everybody wants to be the big dog, the star, and it's not about that. It's just like, how do we all work together to get ahead, and get some real ownership for the people that went to prison for this plant, and let's do it right. Let's do this this whole industry. Well, it's not industry yet, but it's trying to be. But let's make this an integral industry where everybody can win. And I just don't see it.
That's where I'm at too, Bo. And I got one more here for you. I'm getting to the end. I'm going to do a couple more shameless slaps for you. Bo, Monty, Indica. Thanks for being here with me again. You also mentioned that you had Rick Ross on your board, and I saw you doing like maybe a birthday hug with Rick Ross, and I'd be curious to hear what it's like dealing with Rick, man, because he's obviously a legend in many ways, and that seems like an excellent connection to have.
Yeah, Rick is awesome. I mean, so Rick he's been an Indica board member since 2018. He traveled the world with me to really promote social equity, diversity, inclusion, in this cannabis industry. We toured until COVID. So we would do all the conferences, in country, out of country, to really, just make sure that people are aware that social equity was in motion in different municipalities, and that it should be brought back. I mean, it should be brought into other cities and states as well, and countries. And Rick's also a partner of mine, and he's just a really good friend. And Rick's just a really good dude. I mean, he's a real integral person. He just really is. And that's what I can say. I mean, our relationship wouldn't be, I don't think we'd have a relationship this long if he wasn't as integral as he is. Rick does what he says. He's a very loyal person. I think the post that you saw was his grand opening, and we've been trying to get that dispensary open for 4 years now. It's taken us. So
what's up, Rick's selling weed now?
Absolutely. He's back. He's back, but he's selling legal drugs now. So, he's excited, and we've got some other projects coming up that, we're pretty quiet about, but, they'll be launching in this next year. So yeah, it's good. It's great. I'm glad to have him as a partner, friend, colleague, everything else. It's been a great experience, and I wish I could work with more folks like him. And I think that people should really model themselves after someone like Rick that, understands what that loyalty, how important that loyalty really is, and integrity
Hell yeah.
in this industry, especially. So,
Oh yeah. Or the last one he was in too.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of our black and brown folks got caught up in all that. You know what I
Hey.
mean? And we understand how the government was involved in all that. But one thing about Rick is he understands the harm he put on those communities, and that's why give back is real important for him. That's really crucial for him, is to give back to these communities that he harmed.
Oh yeah. I'm all about second chances too, because I've needed a couple in my life.
Of course, all of us have. Come on, but and it could be, and it doesn't have to be all in the same area. Not, and I would say the difference between someone like Rick, myself, and whoever went to prison, it's just that they didn't get caught. You know what I mean? These other people just didn't get caught. But I'm telling you, everybody does some shit. So, I just think that accountability is important, and understanding, what we need to change in ourselves, and how, and I would say give back is the most important thing. You help people, and trust me, I've been fucked by a lot of people that I've helped. So, it's not always a great thing, but sometimes I say, look, I'm going to stop helping folks because they're ingrates and all that. But that's what has created just I would say great karma for me, is just the fact that I've helped so many people get in this industry, get licensed, and get operating. That's important.
Bonita Money, I'm running out of shit here, which is usually where I say thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
And I ask you, did we miss anything that's super pressing that's on your mind right now that you'd like to talk about before you get out of here? Did we miss anything? Do you have any shameless plugs or shout outs? Now's the time.
I think, again, no, I appreciate being on the show. This is great. Again, my thing is not to, I don't like to gossip, talk about people. I just think that the truth needs to be out there. So for me, that's really important. And I think folks like yourself that are not afraid to talk about the real situations is important. So thank you.
Well, if that's all you got, I'm going to bring myself back up. I'm going to do one more shameless slap, Bo Money, Indica. All this stuff is in the description. I'm going to sign it off here. Remember, guys, awesome. The devil's in the details, and the details